What's up guys, hope you're all doing well. We're gonna be doing something a little different today. It's not a review or anything, but I am going to be talking about some nice games as a little side video while I'm working on a few bigger things on the side. And also for a little bit of experimentation in the channel as well, to see if this is something that you guys enjoy as well, alongside fighting the good fight for the games industry. And also because I don't like logging onto social media over the past week or so and being spoon-fed posts and articles from gaming news media trying to recommend Dragon Age Veilguard and Star Wars Outlaws to you guys for Black Friday and Christmas sales, while downplaying or completely ignoring their major mistakes and issues. Simply because for one of them the price dropped down to $50, which is supposed to be this amazing deal because the game just came out, when in reality it's not. It's just that EA and Bioware are looking at their terrible sales and performance after 1 month and they're realizing how fucked they are. And for the other, simply because Ubisoft released this big major update that supposedly fixed the game and now it's amazing, when it's not. It's mostly the same garbage, it's just that now the stealth requirements from the stealth game are no longer required. You can hold on to a gun you picked up from the ground while using ladders and riding your bike, and there's less bugs. And also they put it down to $50.
You can't do it, it's disgusting!
In other news, Bioware also did a whole interview sort of thing where the developers scope about the terrible state of the game, basically showing zero responsibility whatsoever, zero awareness, and zero consideration for their obvious mistakes, and instead just gleefully reminiscing and thanking the Access media for all of their glowing reviews. Seriously, they made no mention whatsoever of the poor reception from the user side. They just allude to sales not being as expected. If you can't acknowledge your flaws and mistakes, then there isn't really no hope for you to ever be able to move forward, to ever be able to improve upon them. You're just doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over. But anyway, even if you've been following that whole David Jaffe versus Vara Dark versus YouTube grifters drama, you may have even noticed that David himself is on that grift, with a video recommending Dragon Age Veilguard and Star Wars Outlaws because they are apparently amazing adventures. So yes, in the midst of all of this garbage that the Access media is trying to feed you, I thought that I'd list 5 nice games to buy instead of those. Because even at a discounted price tag, they are still not worth it, not even out of curiosity, and not even if you're someone who thinks you know what you're getting into and you believe that it's worth it at a $50 price drop. Believe me, you're better off waiting for a bigger price drop if you're curious about them at all. These bigger price drops are coming anyway. These games are extremely repetitive and unremarkable. They are games that will have you tired in the first 10 to 20 hours and the narrative does not help at all. So let's get into some recommendations instead. I'll just talk briefly about the games. This will not be akin to a full analysis though. If you have any specific questions, you can ask me in the comments and I'll get back to you. And also, if you have any game in specific that you'd like a full video on, feel free to suggest it and I might just go for it. Kingdom Come Deliverance Royal Edition. Kingdom Come Deliverance came out in February of 2018, and now in February of 2025, its sequel, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, is set to release. It's a game that I'm very excited and looking forward to because of the quality of the first game and the fact that it seems, at least so far, that this studio remains untouched from the same kinds of ideological things that are plaguing several Western studios right now, leading them to sacrifice certain aspects of their games such as story, writing, characters, world building, and at times even the very essence of fun for unnecessary injections of modern ideals, of morality, diversity, and political correctness. I honestly don't want to get into this kind of stuff in this video, just suffice it to say that it does not really matter what kinds of personal views we have. Gaming should simply be for entertainment and escapism. It should stand outside of all of those things so that it can truly be for everyone. As such, it makes me hopeful that this will be a game that allows us to fully immerse ourselves in its world without being yanked out. Now, obviously, one would be remiss to not mention the fact that despite Kingdom Come Deliverance being a fantastic game, it's also a fucking mess. Seriously, if you're someone who is very strict in the types of games that you're able to play, like for example, if you have very low tolerance for jank, if you have no tolerance or patience for mechanics and gameplay concepts that are not conventional or that are outdated, then this game may not be for you. but it's like $4 right now with all DLC included, so you should definitely consider it anyway. When I got it way back in 2018, I was someone with very low tolerance for jank as well. I hated playing older games because I was used to modern controls and smoothness. Initially, this game was a great shock to all my senses, but I didn't regret spending $60 on it at all. Every little quirk in this game won me over. I hate survival mechanics, yet having to eat, having to heal myself, having to sleep, etc. became elements that only increased my sense of immersion. Initially, the combat feels terrible too, but it actually gets much better once you start training with the knights at a point in the story, and it felt fantastic to actually feel like I was getting stronger and more skillful little by little. The game has a fantastic way to translate this onto the player. Not only do you have various skills and perks and combos to unlock, but small things start to work better too, like swinging faster, longer parry windows, better chances of winning a clinching, and overall more damage dealt and less damage received. Having to tend to your own armors and weapons can also be a total pain in the ass. Actually, let me be clear, everything will be a pain in the ass at the beginning, because you'll be poor and your skills will be shit. Hell, you won't even know how to read. For example, if you want to tend to your own weapons and armor properly, you need better armor skill. However, the more you do it, the better at it you are, the less annoying it becomes. Kinda just like real life, and what I loved about this aspect is that it's so easy to get better at these things initially in the game. Like, this is not going to be forcing you to grind and grind and grind just to get a little bit of XP. It's really well done, and all of these little aspects add to your immersion. But anyway, these are just the technical aspects, because when it comes to the meat of the game, this is where KCD shined the most. The story is presented beautifully with great cutscenes and dialogue that actually really place you in that medieval setting, and the writing is so good. It's a game that wants you to have fun, with plenty of humor, especially to be found in side quests, but also knows when to be taken seriously. Henry's journey is not an easy one, it's filled with ups and downs, and he's a lovable protagonist who was wonderfully written, also in great part because it's so easy for you as a player to put so much of yourself into Henry, and in a weird way, vice versa. Basically, you have plenty of dialogue options in this game. You also have choices to do in main and side quests. You can be more of an asshole or more of a good person, but not at the degree of Baldur's Gate 3 or Mass Effect. It does not drift into extremes like that, unless you take into consideration certain other factors that don't necessarily get acknowledged in the story. So for example, you can be a menacing killer. Nearly every NPC is killable, which would mean that you can play as a psychopath, but certain story paths still remain there regardless, like you won't have these two separate paths, one for a hero or paragon and one for a villain or renegade. That's all I wanted to explain here so that you guys don't go into this game with the wrong idea. This game acknowledges your choices and your dialogue options. It even acknowledges certain optional things within certain quests, like for example, if you perform very well in certain tasks, the game acknowledges that via the characters. There's just a clear limit where that stops. And the other weird aspect where Henry's experiences bleed onto you is to do with how goddamn hard everything is at the start of the game. You're just a peasant, a nobody, you don't understand how things work. You can fully place yourself onto Henry and grow your skills based on what kind of paths and what kinds of things you want to invest in. Basically, I always start my playthroughs being a raggedy-ass thief. I steal everything that isn't nailed down, I don't care. I do the missions for the Thieves Guild. Yes, by the way, there is a sort of a Thieves Guild, and working for them is super fun and profitable, especially in the early game. The freedom the game gives you is fantastic, and learning along the way is the best way to play. You can go into almost any interior, and you have to be very careful and quiet. There's plenty of things that play into this too, like for example, certain clothes will make more noise. It even matters if you wear darker or brighter colors. Lockpicking is a bitch of a minigame at the start, but I promise you, it gets way easier the more you practice. Don't lose your patience with it, it will pay off. And there's also a whole crime system too, and like I said, the best way for you to play is to just cut loose, do whatever feels right to you, get immersed, have fun, take risks, and learn. Sometimes it may be annoying, and you will lose a lot of stuff, like for example, the first time I got stopped for a search of my inventory, in Rai, which made me learn that I should never carry stolen goods on me and keep them in my chest instead. But there'll also be very surprising things in a good way, like for example the first time that I said fuck it, let's try it, and I sneaked into a guard barracks at night, knocked everyone out with ease and stole their stuff. Then I ran out as fast as I could onto my horse and bolted to the closest safe house to store my stolen goods. Then the next time I visited the city, I even saw some of the guards I stole from walking around in their underwear. I could talk about this game for hours and hours, and I could be like, alright guys, now it's time for the audio part, and now it's time for the story part, now it's time for the side quests part, now let me detail the combat for you, but it would just stretch the video out way too much, so I hope that my description gave you an idea of the kind of game that this game is, why I loved it, and why I think you guys should play it too, especially in preparation for the sequel in February. I'll be sure to talk about this game again, especially focusing on what I hope to see present in the sequel and what I hope to see fixed, etc. close to launch. Now let's move on to the next game. Greedfall. So Greedfall is a little budget action RPG developed by Spiders and released in 2019. I remember playing this in 2020 I think, and it was pretty decent. Going into it I already knew of some of Spiders' work, which is why I didn't shell out $60 at launch. Also, I was totally broke at the time. Another two games that are from Spiders before Greedfall are Technomancer and Bound by Flame. I only ever played a little bit of Bound by Flame. It was pretty bad. It wasn't terrible, but with so much good stuff out to play, I just didn't bother to stick with it. There wasn't enough value in it for that, at least for me. I may return to it someday since I have now gained a new level of tolerance and patience, especially for older games or games that are not, as polished and as smooth as some AAA games are. But aside from that, there is Technomancer, which on the other hand is a totally different story. I actually kinda liked this game. I mean, it was caked in problems and jank, and unlike Kingdom Come Deliverance, it didn't do enough to immerse me and make the enjoyment of the game trump the jank. But there was a lot there to like. It was nice to see such a small and low-budget studio put in some hard work to give players multiple dialogue options, choices to make, etc. And the setting was also cool, a fucked up wastelandish future in Mars. But again, it still left too much to be desired, so when I heard of Greedfall, I didn't immediately jump in. And when I finally did, I went in with low expectations. I don't actually remember how the reception for this game was, the only thing I remember was seeing this meme here. Friendship ended with Bioware. Now, Spiders is my best friend. This was obviously because Anthem was a total shit show, and totally not what Bioware fans wanted from a Bioware game. Also, the state of Andromeda 2 years before that also probably helped as well, because it was obviously not up to par with the trilogy. And it was also bad for those few people who actually played and enjoyed Andromeda, because EA pulled the plug on all the expansions, one of which was supposed to be a big one, including the Lost Quarian arc. So yeah, needless to say, at this time BioWare had lost all of our faith and goodwill, and now with Veilguard they pretty much shot it into the fucking moon. So anyway, I guess that Greedfall's reception cannot have been too bad, but knowing this industry the way that I do, like having seen what I've seen, where so many good or at least decent games get totally disregarded just because they're not perfect, leads me to think that it might have still had a lot of hate because a perfect game this is not. Still a damn good one though, fellas, okay? So here's a few quick bullet points of what you can expect to decide whether or not to give this a go. First of all, this is leagues better than Dragon Age Veilguard as an RPG. You actually have choices to make in this game and different ways to achieve your goals. Several quests and side quests often have different paths built into them for different types of characters to achieve things according to the skills that you specialize into. So you usually can just go in through the front door, sword in hand. You usually can go in through the back of a location if you circle the building or look for different entrances either above you or below you, or you can also use the front door if you find a disguise to be able to enter the area. You usually can either find a key to a lock, pick a lock, blow up a wall, or use your persuasion skills to have those doors open for you.
Those Nauts took him from us, but now we've got him back, and he'll be staying with us.
Would you be so kind as to hear what I have to say, Sir Fontaine? You've taken your son against his will and have him locked up like merchandise in a warehouse. Is that what you call being a good father?
If I hadn't taken him back, he would have been hauled off on one of the cursed ships.
Or you can use contextual information that you may find by paying attention or by specializing into intuition or intelligence or whatever it was. Obviously, lockpicking is a talent that you'll need to unlock, blowing up a wall requires a bomb, which is part of alchemy, which you also have to specialize into, so on and so forth. This game does not have a wild variety of these skills and talents, but it does have a few, and it's enough to give you a sense of variety and agency. Works in the open world too. There's some jumps that you just can't make and pathways that you cannot take unless you specialize into agility. Or again, alchemy, because sometimes you can blow up a wall, or sometimes you may find a door that leads you somewhere and you need to be able to lockpick. Basically, the game will reward you for the choices that you make and the things that you specialize into. The combat is fine, you're definitely not going to be playing this game for the action, but you do have 3 different and interchangeable classes: a warrior, a mage, and then one that specializes on firearms and bombs. It's definitely serviceable and you can switch in the middle of your playthrough. The biggest issues I would say that you're going to have are the environments, including the big cities that you'll visit. They can get very repetitive in a literal sense. There are several locations in-game that are going to be reusing the same buildings and interiors, important locations too, which is why it's so noticeable, because of course many games reuse all sorts of stuff, but in Greedfall, for example, all the main palaces where the main leaders of each faction reside are the same on the inside, and you also keep finding the same paintings up on walls all the time. Outside of that, out in the world, there is no biome change, so since the game can run a bit long if you're trying to complete it, you may feel like I did, where I was starving for some variation. The rest in many ways will come down to your tolerance level of the game's lower budget roots. Writing and story were unremarkable to me, but they weren't dull nor stupid. I just don't really remember feeling much for most of the story, and admittedly, some of the themes are not my cup of tea. So your mileage may vary in this aspect depending on whether or not you enjoy the type of setting more than I do, but I do remember feeling damn satisfied at how many of the quests played out in terms of the choices that I had and how to tackle them. It's often on sale for like $8. I would say that you're going to be far from regretting your purchase, but definitely understand that what you're walking into is a game that has not yet mastered its own level of ambition. However, it is still refreshing to see a studio try to improve itself. Stellar Blade. Let's get a 2024 game in here now. So obviously everyone already knows damn well what Stellar Blade is. It has been all over the internet for the entire year, constantly used as both an example of what women are supposed to look like in comparison posts against other female characters that got totally butchered, like in Concord or the recent Nier Automata crossover with Ubisoft where they pretty much put a dude in 2B's costume, or in other kinds of comparison posts against female characters that are designed by people who are afraid of displaying attractive female characters in their video games because of ideological nonsense. It is also used alongside Black Myth Wukong in comparison with some of the biggest Western flops of this year because of how well it sold. Obviously nothing sold better than Black Myth Wukong, but if you didn't know, Stellar Blade was a total success and launched its studio into the market. They're already hard at work on future games coming to PC and consoles, and I can't wait. Because this game is genuinely great, and that's one of the things that I wish people would talk about when bringing it up. I've gotten comments in the past saying that this game isn't even good, story is bad, writing is bad, and the combat is mid, and I couldn't disagree more. While this game cannot be compared to Nier Automata's level of brilliance when it comes to its deeply thought-provoking story and writing, that does not mean that what it does is trash. This is yet another annoying example of people being totally dismissive of quality and effort simply because it's not topping the charts, or being better than the top game in the same genre. It's a very weird and childish attitude, but I see it done by grown-ass adults. It looks like kindergarten console war bullshit, and it has to stop because we are at a point right now where we can't really rely on the major studios to provide us with the best games with all that's going on right now. We're going to have to look to and rely on smaller studios with smaller budgets that are unaffected by ideological bullshit. And smaller studios with smaller budgets also often have much less experience, so we'll be seeing a lot of games that play like Kingdom Come Deliverance and Greedfall before they're able to play smoothly like something being backed by hundreds of millions of dollars and like 20 years of experience making video games. So anyway, this little rant aside, let's talk about Stellar Blade. None of the stuff that I even mentioned right now applies to it because the game is expertly made. It's actually very smooth and responsive. And the story really isn't as bad as what people are saying, it's just this game gets compared to Nier Automata, and that game's story is just absolutely amazing. Truth is that Stellar Blade's story is actually better than much of the AAA slop that I've seen lately. Overall, it's just not nothing to write home about in comparison to Nier Automata. The combat flows beautifully and it's satisfying. Some people talk about Sekiro and Souls influence, and I guess it has some Souls-like qualities, but it's much more forgiving and action-focused. You can make it harder if you like, but the regular experience is much more light, and it places you on top. You're not like an undead, destitute guy rotting away in an asylum. You are a bona fide monster-killing machine. Exploration is where this game is at its weakest. I prefer the areas where we were in a city, which were more linear and tight, but then later on you end up going to two deserts and there's not much to see there. One is rocky and the other one is sandy. They're both pretty unimaginative and exist solely for you to do your thing. Kill some beasts, get some more XP, crafting components, and of course get those fancy suits. There's also some side quests that you can get up to, but it's all very flat in these deserts. There's very little verticality and engaging traversal opportunities as there are in the better designed linear city areas. XP gets you new skills and abilities which totally impact your playthrough. Crafting components allow you to craft suits and upgrade your body frames. They come with different kinds of boosts to fit different sorts of playstyles, and the suits are amazing. They were all beautifully designed and there's loads of them. In other words, Stellar Blade is far more than just a pretty face and a hot body. It's an extremely well-made action game with a very interesting setting and a damn engaging story, and I hope that it will be something that more people recognize, especially as it moves towards a PC release as well, because it left me a fan of this studio. I can't wait to see what else they do, and I actually hope that we get a sequel of sorts to this game, because the universe itself, the lore and shit, is something that I definitely want to see more of. Also worth noting that there was a controversy about censorship. Here's an abridged version of the situation. Yes, Sony pressured them to censor a couple of outfits and they caved. Sort of. They added a bit of fabric on a couple of outfits for launch. Then, in an update later, they added the exact same outfits that they were told to censor, but uncensored and in different colors. Then, in the summer update, they added even more revealing outfits to the game, straight up weird sci-fi bikinis as part of the summer event, which was a really nice addition, by the way. And then, to top it all off, they changed some physics around and did a totally unapologetic Nier Automata crossover. So yeah, as far as censoring things go, these developers have more than shown that they're not going to cave to stupid Western demands.
Salve, friend.
The many shall suffer for the sins of the one.
Salve, friend. Mind telling me who you are? I don't think so. I've never seen you before in my life.
If even one person commits a sin here, every last one of us will die.
The Forgotten City. This one is both the easiest and hardest game to recommend. On one hand, it's one of the coolest smaller experiences that I've ever had, but on the other, it's a highly ambitious indie project made mostly through a lot of passion and self-sacrifice from the main developer on the project, which is noticeable because it's truly great, but it's also a very low-budget looking game. There's a lot of jank and the visuals are what they are, and I know that that doesn't fly with some people. But a little backstory first. The Forgotten City was first a mod for Skyrim, under the exact same name, created by Nick James Pierce. It was basically a DLC quest, and a damn quality one at that. He had some people voice lines for it, and Trent Moriarty composed the music for it. It was a very high quality project. And the thing about the contents of this mod and this game itself is that it's all so much better if experienced with zero spoilers at all, because it's all about the story and the experience, and nothing trumps that first playthrough. I can mention some things about the setup though. So in the mod for Skyrim you receive a letter, go to a location, and at this point is where my memory fails me, I think we find a lady there who sends us into an old dwarven ruin to find her brother. When we go inside we're plunged down a massive hole leading to the ruin. Everywhere you look it's just a bunch of corpses. If I recall correctly, some are turned into stone, but I may be mistaken. Again, it's been a long time since I played the mod, and the game did some things differently, which is why I get them both mixed up in my head a little bit. But anyway, once inside you find a letter and a corpse with a very interesting and cryptic message, insinuating that the man you're looking for, who happens to be the corpse, has been down there for ages and can still be saved, leading you to get to a location where you get portaled into the past, or to a different dimension or some crazy shit like that. The premise is very simple. In this paradise city, if someone commits a crime or a sin, then they will trigger some sort of event where everyone will die. Everyone down there knows this, it's called the Golden Rule, but then there's all sorts of hidden mysteries underneath and all sorts of intrigue between these characters. After all, everyone is human and humans are prone to fail. Your job initially is very straightforward. You're meant to stop whatever's going to happen that day from happening, which will trigger the death of everyone, and you have to do it without breaking the Golden Rule yourself. Otherwise, you'll be the one fucking everything up for everyone else. But then there's also a lot more stuff that can come to happen, and a lot of other stuff that gets revealed, and there's even multiple endings, one of which is very creative, which has to do with you creating some sort of paradox, basically. But you have to figure that out all on your own. The game doesn't hold your hand and relies on you to do all of your exploration and figure things out. The rest is history. Suffice to say that you'll have a lot of interesting dialogues to have, stories to discover about the characters in there, disasters to avert, and a lot of experimentation to do as you work your way through a time loop. There's also a few puzzles to do, some of which are like classic video game puzzles, but others are more complex puzzles where you have to find out how to avert someone's death in the game or how to prevent certain events from taking place, etc. It's a fantastic mod, but an even better game. Let me read you this excerpt from the wiki. In 2016, after the release of the mod, Pierce quit his day job and hired several other developers to form Modern Storyteller, which is the studio. The resulting development process took 4.5 years, characterized by harsh development conditions, with Pierce working 80-hour weeks to the point of hallucination to avoid crunching fellow developers. In the process, the original mod was entirely overhauled. The standalone game was developed using Unreal Engine 4, the setting was changed, and numerous features were added, such as professional voice acting, new gameplay mechanics, and an original orchestral score. Additionally, the original script doubled in length from roughly 35,000 words to over 80,000. So yeah, the game version of this mod is a much more well-rounded and feature-complete version of the original experience with the mod. It's obviously completely changed thematically as well. There's no such thing as, for example, the Dwarven Ruins. Instead, this takes place in an ancient Roman ruin kind of thing, and the start is also changed. However, it also mixes in mythological aspects from ancient Rome, but also some other ancient civilizations. I refuse to say any more because I would start getting into spoiler territory and I really don't want to. This got awards from Writers Guilds for a reason. The transition into a full game was perfect. It allowed them to design the locations in a much better way and decorate them the exact way that I imagine he imagined when he made the mod, but I had to work with limitations. I wholeheartedly recommend this game for anyone interested in something that steps outside of the norm. It's not an action game, it's not an adventure game, like there's some sections with some light platforming and light combat, but yeah, this is 100% not the point of the experience at all. You've got a lot of smart dialogues, and in the standalone version it's even different as you play as a modern person, so you play as like yourself, finding yourself suddenly in some ancient Roman place. Lots of creative dialogues to have, some good humor here and there, and different options for you to try for your character startup, which can impact your run. Like there are certain items that you can take with you, and I think you can also choose to be like a historian, which will allow you to be able to understand certain things, or you can choose other type of character archetypes that give you different types of advantages. It's usually on sale for like $12, but it's also totally worth it even at its full price. Give it a go, you may just end up finding something special yourself. There's a lot of experimentation and replayability, though like I said, nothing beats that first time as you uncover all of the mysteries and all of the mini-stories going on within that Roman city. If you want to play the mod in Skyrim first instead, you can do that on PC or Xbox. It's totally worth it as well, but I would definitely recommend you play the game first if what I'm saying sounds good at all to you. Then after that you can play the mod and see how they did it over there, because no matter where you play it first, you will be basically spoiling some concepts of the experience for yourself, so you're better off experiencing the real deal first. However, if you do feel uneasy and want to check out the mod, you will still have some surprises in store for you in the game because of all the additional content and all of the thematic and lore changes that the developers put into it.
Charlie, we're here. Your prayers are answered. Pour us a drink. Finally.
Banishers Ghosts of New Eden. So this is a game from 2024 as well, one that got totally forgotten along the way. Even the Game Awards totally ignored it, and there were definitely some categories where it could have fit in. The fact that Veilguard managed to get a few nominations and the DLC of Elden Ring managed to get a Game of the Year nomination, but this didn't get a single appearance, just makes me sick and goes to show how lost the Game Awards have become, where instead of promoting good stuff from a growing industry, especially from smaller studios, they are instead promoting wherever the fuck is on the mainstream. Anyway, I'm working on a full video on Banishers on the side, which I hope I will be able to complete sooner than later, so I'll go more into detail when that time comes. For this video though, just know that this is an action-adventure game from Dontnod and published by Focus. I like Focus because they usually put out really good games at smaller budgets. For example, they also published Space Marine 2 this year, and they published Atlas Fallen last year, and so on and so forth. Their games are usually pretty good, smaller scale stuff, and some of the games are so good that they actually give the AAA market a run for their money. For Dontnod themselves as a studio, this is the biggest project they've undertaken. They tried to emulate AAA quality on a smaller scale, and I would say that they did a damn good job. The game is slow-paced and very focused on the main story, which pertains to two Banishers, Red and Antea, traveling far away to a distant land, America, the New World, to banish a peculiarly powerful ghost at the request of one of their best friends and teacher. When they get there, everything is looking wrong. There is no daytime, and despite it being June, it's as cold and bitter as winter. Obviously there's something really wrong going on, and it takes a turn for the worst. The first hour or so of the game is very slow. The same thing can be said for Vampire. Another great game from Dontnod that also has a very slow stretch of game around the beginning where it can throw certain players off who don't like a lot of talking in their games. I can tell you that if you stick through it, it's worth it, but yeah, I do wish that Dontnod got this part of their presentation improved in future titles so that potential players don't get turned away. Anyway, after this intro level, shit hits the fan and you're plunged into the world again. You've got a vast stretch of land to cross in order to get to your destination, and you do so slowly and by parts. The world design is akin to God of War 2018, where you have these interconnected areas to explore, which slowly open themselves up to you as you progress and get new abilities or new pieces of gear that you need to unlock new paths and certain treasures. So basically Metroidvania. It works really well, and it allowed the devs to pour a lot of attention into the environments, making them look fantastic. Combat is decent, very repetitive and samey at first, but after a while you start unlocking new abilities and also a gun to be able to use alongside with your sword. It takes some getting used to, and it's obviously not up to par with AAA game combat systems, but it certainly works well. There's some thinking required, and enemies aren't damage sponges. There's also loot that gives you gear. The pieces of gear that you pick up are parts of sets that come with different sorts of buffs and perks and etc., which together with certain skills and abilities allow you to have a little bit of variety in the types of builds that you create. I had one, for example, where it was all about maximizing the damage from my rifle. This system does not run very deep, but it's definitely appreciated. As a ghost hunter and a curse breaker, there's going to be these haunting cases for you to solve along the way. They're very linear, but at the end of each one you will have an important decision to make, which contributes to one of 4 different endings to the game. It also contributes to different world states. You can play this game at least twice and have a very different experience. One in which things are a little bit more lively, there's more people surviving alive, and one in which there are more people that are doomed to death. Both world states have their own separate haunting cases and side quests, so replayability is there. However, sadly, they never put in New Game Plus. It totally would have benefited this game greatly, but we're in December, so I doubt that it's ever going to come. One of my favorite features of this game is the setting and the world building. They did a fantastic job bringing this little universe of theirs to life by working very hard on the lore. It even connects to the lore of the Vampire game. I think they're doing a bit of an expanded universe sort of thing of paranormal-centered games. Vampire obviously dealt with the underworld of vampires and werewolves and shit, and this game is about ghost spirits and occult stuff. It's very fleshed out, which is fucking refreshing, especially after playing Veilguard. The individual elements come together really nicely. Some haunting cases are even very thought-provoking as they give you tough moral choices to make if you care about that kind of thing. I would say the biggest issues you will find in this game are probably to do with performance, because it could be a bit better optimized, but it's still nothing major to worry about. And perhaps a bit of repetition if you're going for completion, because even though the haunting cases are good, the side quests are not. But exploring this world was great. There's some beautiful sights to see, and the game keeps you engaged with some combat and light puzzles without overstaying its welcome. It's yet another example of smaller studios putting in hard work to improve themselves and set higher bars for their work, and I am all for that. There's gonna be some social commentary, especially at the start. After all, one of your protagonists is a black woman, and we all know what black people were regarded as in colonial America. But it's not overbearing, and it's presented well without awkward writing or morality bullshit being hammered into your noodle like the misgendering scene from Veilguard. It's also really just around the start of the game. One of my favorite things about Don't Nod games in general is their ability to present some of these social commentary things in video games without making them cringe. Like, they're not here to paint all white people as villains, they're not here to paint all minorities as victims. What they do is they write realistic characters and throw them onto these worlds that they create, and it's all handled very well and naturally. And with that, I am done. 5 games for you guys to consider picking up this holiday season instead of the garbage that the games journalists would rather feed to you. Sorry that I sound a little bit fucked up today. I'm a little bit sick. I'm running a little bit. I'm running low on juice. I sound like Sleepy Joe Biden today. If you already have all 5 of these games and this video was useless to you, then well, good sir or madam, feel free to leave me a dislike, but you should know that you have exquisite taste. Thanks for watching. Leave me a like if you enjoyed the video or if it was useful to you. Subscribe if you're new, and let me know your list of recommendations in the comments. I'll see you on the next one.